Artificial intelligence is increasingly being seen as a powerful tool to fast-track global development. But how can it be used to responsibly and effectively to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? A new framework explores the enablers, drivers and strategies needed to harness AI for inclusive and sustainable impact. Now, for more on this, we're joined by Tobi Kasali, Senior Analyst at the UN Office for Digital Technologies. Tobi, appreciate your time and season's compliments.
Oh, thank you, Hugo. Nice to be here.
All right, so our conversation is around the impact of artificial intelligence on SDGs. But let's talk about technology as a stock. Just how much technological advancements has been used in achieving the SDGs, taking into context that we are 4 years away from 2030?
I think technology has played already an important role in getting us to where we are. I mean, with only 5 years remaining, we've seen increased access to electricity, clean cooking, and of course, the internet. We have access to education that has increased. More girls are staying in school. Child marriage is declining. In areas such as education, for example, we've been able to provide tailored access to technology has been able to provide tailored access to students. It's helped with economic development. We're creating new jobs in the digital economy. So technology is already playing a big role in trying to get us towards 2030 goals that we have in the SDGs.
So I want to focus on some of those SDGs: poverty eradication, quality education, gender equality, clean energy, climate action, and certainly reduced inequalities. Where would you say the greatest progress has been achieved, and what are some of the key shortcomings?
I think we've had good progress across the board, but I think if we look at education, for example, we've already seen, like I mentioned, really high rate of increase of education attainment for students. We've especially also seen progress with health. So if we're talking about technology, but even AI that we're going to talk about today, we've seen progress with AI helping with early detection, early disease detection, and also early disease monitoring. So I think if we're going to look at where AI and technology have played a good role, I think education, I think health is really important as well. And I think also in agriculture, we're already seeing progress with AI on crop monitoring, on helping to improve resilience and prevent agricultural losses. So I would say those are the three, not three key areas, but key areas where we can see the ability and potential of AI to really drive us towards 2030. Of course, the SDGs are interlocking. So, for example, when we have progress in education, we can see that progress will also impact gender equality. That progress will also impact the ability to have jobs and local economic development.
So AI and obviously technology comes in two forms. The one form is where individuals like you and I would use artificial intelligence or technology to better our lives. But the other, which is what you were speaking to, is when the UN, for instance, or countries, right, employ artificial intelligence or technology to better the lives of their citizens. Now, when we look at South Africa, it's one of the most unequal countries on the planet. So let's use that as a test case, and artificial intelligence being the conversation that we're talking about. How do you envision AI being used to deal with that issue of inequality in a country like South Africa?
I think AI has the capacity to address some of these inequalities that we have. So, for example, if we talk about, let's say health as an example, I know health inequality, economic inequality, educational disparities, gender inequality. But let's say health, for example, we've seen already with some examples in Ethiopia where AI is helping to support telehealth and disease detection, for example, whooping cough, skin disease in remote areas where people would otherwise not have access to doctors. Maybe they had to travel really long distances, right, to see a health professional. Now maybe they take a picture with their phone and they're able to have already consultations, AI diagnostic, supported diagnosis, saying, okay, this is the problem you have. You don't have to travel all the way here to see a doctor. You can go somewhere closer to you to use. You can go somewhere closer to you to get help. Also in agriculture, for example, which is important for African countries, for example, like South Africa that you've mentioned. Again, the ability to develop resilience helps us to build food security in our countries, helps us to ensure that the farmers who form, huge parts of our local economies in Africa are able to have a sustainable means of employment, and also provide low cost food security for the nation. So it's less about maybe just individual use of AI, generative AI, and more about the ability to build state capacity. In another area, maybe let's talk about the provision of public services. So you can have digital public infrastructure that is implemented by government. AI can help augment and support this, enabling digital solutions and improved economic government solutions to citizens.
Now, a big part of the success of artificial intelligence, or more importantly, the SDGs, is the provision of the resources, right? Now, a big barrier, obviously, is inadequate funding. And the people or the countries, the nations that can fund this are largely those that are in the West, right? Now, what is the provision of funding towards achievement of these goals by those that have the money, and certainly what implications does it have on the poorer nations, particularly those that are in some states in Asia and Africa?
And this is a really critical point you're making, because we see that the biggest gap potentially between AI and real world development impact today is sort of capacity development, and this capacity covers what you've mentioned: funding, it covers human capacity, it covers state capacity. But if we talk about funding, the UN Secretary General released a report on innovative financing options for AI capacity building. And the idea behind that is to try to ensure that there are financing capacities to ensure that countries, like you mentioned, in Africa and Asia, are able to build a minimum irreducible capacity in the use adoption of AI. And some of the proposals put forward for voluntary funding is, for example, maybe the tech companies could maybe put aside maybe 0.01% or 2% of some of their profits towards a fund that is able to build this minimum irreducible capacity in countries that covers data, compute, skills development, and also the development of AI strategies. Another option is also in-kind contributions. So again, technology companies or other countries that have this sort of compute capacity and data capacity can provide access to less developed countries in the area of AI, maybe storage capacity, compute capacity to share, so that these countries that are, I mean, mostly medium and lower developing countries can take advantage of this to get themselves to the level where they're at least able to understand and use and engage with AI tools to start to build their own capacity in AI.
Now, I was reading an article by Professor Mtambara that speaks on some of these issues around artificial intelligence. And what he speaks about SDGs is that it rests on the quality of leadership. Now, that leadership is not primarily about the presidents or governments. It is also about tech companies, right, who make absolute millions, if not billions, of dollars from users on the African continent. Let's talk about processes of engagement to use, as you mentioned a little bit earlier on, some of these tech companies to donate even small amounts or services to improve the use of both tech and artificial intelligence in bettering the lives of people on the continent in particular.
Yeah, I think this is where it's really important, the job that the UN does, especially in terms of international digital cooperation. So again, as part of some of the recommendations when the Secretary General launched the high-level advisory body on AI, there were sort of two recommendations that talk about international cooperation. At the UN, a big sort of key point is that everyone across the country, all the 193 countries, can come together to shape the future, shape AI governance, shape discussions on capacity building. And so one of the two sort of key mechanisms for this is an international scientific panel on AI. Right? This ensures that governments, technology providers, philanthropists, academia, researchers come together to provide evidence-based assessment on AI independently. Once this information is available, it's available to all 193 countries, right? So it's a bit of it provides thematic briefs to policymakers. So whether you're in the West or you are from South Africa or Nigeria, as myself, you have access to scientific evidence on the risks, the opportunities for AI. This already provides some capacity to developing countries. The second means of this sort of digital cooperation is global dialogue on AI, or multi-stakeholder dialogue on AI. Again, the focus of this dialogue, enabling, again, this group of wide stakeholders from every country, both the Western countries and sort of least developing countries, to have discussions on capacity gaps, on the way to build capacity building, on human rights and accountability, on also how to develop open source AI that you can use as a public good. So how do we support the development of digital public goods of AI that countries can take without having to sustain or deep capital development costs for some of these AIs that require, of course, a lot of compute power, a lot of spend on infrastructure and skills development as well.
Now, when we look at Africa, it's over 1.4 billion people. It's the second most populous continent. Young median age of about just shy of 20, and over 60% under the age of 25. So as a collective, I mean, we potentially have a huge bargaining chip, right? What's the importance of the African Union or bodies that manage various districts, if you will, or blocks on the African continent to come together and use this statistic as a bargaining chip when in conversation with some of those agencies and companies across the world?
I think it's really, really important for leaders, national, regional, and at the continental level, like you've mentioned, to have and to develop national strategies for AI, for data, and for skills. National strategies, regional strategies, and continental. So I'll first start with national strategies. Even as a nation, we need to decide where we want to be on the AI journey. How do we want to start? A national strategy that determines how we want to collect data. Data is key to AI development. How do we want to build? What kind of skills development do we want to build for the future? You speak about the youth dividend that we have, but it's really critical that we understand the skills that are needed for the next 25 years. What are the AI literacy skills that we need? What are the software engineering skills that we need? What are the digital data analytics skills that we need? What are the skills we need to manage AI systems? Not forgetting the skills, of course, of domain expertise. You still have to understand the health system, but the ability to create strategies that focus on creating an enabling environment for researchers, for local SMEs, not only to build, but also to absorb the use of AI. That's at the national level, right? At the continental and regional level, we need to think, we are, like you say, a good block. We need to think about how we want to use our data, how we want to ensure that we're not going back, we don't fall into patterns of old patterns where we provide data, which is the key resource now, and then we receive just models that are used. How do we develop capacity on the continent to stop the brain drain, to ensure that our researchers have access to data? How do we develop those regulatory frameworks so that our data is clean, responsible, and able to be used for AI? How do we ensure that human rights, we develop frameworks for human rights that are for AI that are rights respecting, and ensure that AI is used and targeted for SDGs? How do we bring together the private sector to drive local innovation, and all of this to ensure that we're able to have national autonomy and able to build long-term digital resilience? It's really key that at the national level we come together, we develop national strategies, and at the continental level for AU, for the regional commissions, South Africa, ECOWAS, AAC, the SDGs to come together to say, this is how we want to think about sharing, not just developing national capacity, but the ability to also to share resources, the ability to share capacity across the continent.
Tobi, appreciate your time. Tobi Kasali, Senior Analyst at the UN Office for Digital Technologies, speaking to us from Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Certainly a lot still that needs to be done.